Hey, Grandpa.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm doing good. We just got back from AM Cafe. How are you feeling today, Grandpa?
uh, Pretty rested.
You've been sleeping.
Yeah,
You've been actually sleeping the last couple of days, right?
yeah,
Usually, Grandpa has to sit up in a chair to sleep, but he's been able to lay down and sleep. That's huge, huh?
yep.
That's awesome. Okay, Grandpa. Well, I have some. I left you with quite a few questions last time. Are you ready?
Yes.
You got a big Q&A session today, guys. Okay, question number one. What was Regina like, my mother, when she was young?
Regina was always a delight to be around. She was strong-willed, but was respectful to Betty and me with times of minor conflict of will. She struggled with friendships, not of her making, but the smallness of others. She always was intelligent, thoughtful, and growing up, sweet.
That's awesome. What was Mike like when he was young?
Mike was fun-loving and pestered Regina a lot. He and Regina were good students. He adapted to life here as he was so young when we came to the valley.
Yeah.
He was only a year old,
Mm-hmm.
a little more.
Man.
Now, your mother was 5, so she had a little more adjusting to do. When we were in Ohio, just before we left, my best friend's son was kind of a pain, grabbed your mother's hand and bit it
What?
really much. And that's the only time I saw Charlie lose it. Went over and whacked him good.
Whoa.
And it was just kind of a kiddish thing. But
Who's this? Was this Charlie Bell?
yeah, Charlie Bill's son.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. But that was at about the time we left.
Wow.
And when we left there was a tornado that just was 5 minutes ahead of us and took out about 2 blocks of Cincinnati. Just before we were going to Charlie's, just before that happened,
Yeah.
about the biting,
Wow.
we were scheduled to have dinner at their house.
Man.
But Mike was built friends quickly and had a different experience and friendships outside of the church. And Regina tried to make friends within the church, and there were some young women who had, in my opinion, poor skills in dealing with friendships.
Yeah.
And that's how your mom developed a sense of being rejected.
Huh. Okay, well, next question. What traditions would you like us to continue?
Well, Thanksgiving together
Yeah.
and holidays, birthday celebrations of all kinds, just gatherings.
Gatherings, yeah. How about the one of my favorite traditions that we've always done is the Knott's Berry Farm.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's been my
I didn't even mention that.
favorite.
Yeah, Knott's Berry Farm became a tradition, kind of accidentally.
Tell me how that happened.
It was a friend of ours that said, "Well, go after Thanksgiving," and I was exhausted, because I had a service on Thanksgiving Eve or the night before.
Yeah.
So we went, and the family went, and we relaxed, etc. The next year we did it again, and from then on, it became a part of what we did.
And when did that start, you think? Didn't you do it as a kid? You went as a kid or something?
Oh yes, I did. And when I was a kid, I'd never been. My family never went. My next door neighbor was going over to Knott's Berry Farm, and he was taking his daughter So he asked my dad, he said, would it be all right if I took your son along?
How old were you?
About 7.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Knott's Berry Farm was open when you were 7, so that was what, 1941?
42. 42.
Whoa.
But you have to understand that it had already been operational before that. It's been there since the late 1930s.
Wow.
And but it was free, and you just went in. And they had the place where you could eat, but we didn't. These were still hard times. You had the old town, no rides, nothing, dirt for the roads, and that was, that might have been 1940, because I may have been just 5 years old.
Whoa. So what are because they have the old town ghost town now.
That was it.
So the little walkthrough, that's all it was.
That's all there was.
But probably in a much different way.
Yeah.
Well, what was it like when you walked through?
Well, the big thing was, for one thing, it was like going to a ghost town, and which was fascinating.
Yeah.
And I think the big thing everybody enjoyed was they had a guy with a microphone, and he was in the side room, and then they would talk to you, the person, you know.
He's in the jail cell.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and so you come up and, hi, Betty, how you doing? You know, and he's like, whoa. Because you give all the information.
Yeah.
He came in from Ohio. Oh, okay. And or whatever, you know.
I remember you guys did that to me when I was a kid.
Yeah, yeah.
There's in Knott's Berry Farm, there's this little nook. It's a little alley you go down, and it's a small makeshift jail cell kind of thing made out of wood. And inside there's it's just like a little wooden figure guy, right? He's not real. He's just got some fake props on. But I don't know who you talk to, but you go off to the side and you say, I'm going to bring my son up to the jail cell, and his name is Christian, and he likes Power Rangers, and they went up and they took me up there, and he knew everything about me. And so they did that back in 1940.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
What were the shops like? Did they have people in them, or was it like just kind of abandoned buildings?
It was just mostly buildings to look at.
Yeah.
So you had props, and you had, all kinds. He built it. He did have a berry farm right next door. Right. And they had he developed the boysenberry.
Right.
And so he started picking up these old buildings and putting them next to his fields until he built a little town. And so they called it Knott's Berry Farm.
Wow.
And that's how it began.
That's amazing.
He was a devout Christian, by the way. And they finally sold it, and then it became commercialized and lost a little of its glitter. But,
right, yeah.
But everybody that came to California went there.
Yeah. Is that a tradition you'd like us to continue?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Because that's one that I'd want to continue.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Next question, give me a second. What do you want your great-great-grandchildren to know about you? So my kids.
Well, that life is built on loving one another and being humble. And most of all, to accept Christ as personal Savior.
Yeah.
I'd like all my progeny, all the way down, to be devout Christians.
Yeah. Is there anything that you want them to know about you in particular?
Well, maybe just the struggle I had with my life, and that without papering it with stained glass, to let people know that out of a humble beginning, you can make a difference. You can move forward.
Yeah.
You can become more than I could in my time.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Next question. What was your favorite vacation or family trip growing up?
There was only one.
One.
Yeah, and it was fun during the war. And Dad got talked into it. It was he and another couple, and Mom, and me and Jack. I'm not even sure that Gloria was born yet, but I think she was. And we went to June Lake. I'd never been there, never seen it. I was just awestruck because it's a very beautiful place up near Mammoth. And the experience was great, but the memory I have is Dad and his friends went off drinking, and we just sat around the lake. We didn't do anything.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was it.
Oh, man. That was your trip to June
And
Lake.
we actually drove through the Antelope Valley. And I remember the Joshua trees, and I had to be 7,
Wow. Man.
maybe 8.
June Lake. I don't know if I've ever been to June Lake.
It's a good fishing area.
Yeah.
Your Uncle Don used to fish there a lot.
Oh, maybe we went up there with him. I remember going up on a fishing trip with him.
Yeah, he loved June Lake.
Yeah. Man. Did you ever have any pets?
We had a family pet dog named Tippy, who had a white tip on his black tail.
His name was Tippy?
Tippy. So we named him Tippy because he had this white thing on his tail.
Okay.
He was able to, he was a part shepherd and part collie. And Mother would say to him, watch the babies. And they would, when we were living on the farm in Marcola, and, had little ones, and they'd start up toddling up the driveway, which was kind of on a slant. And that dog would go up and grab them by the diaper and pull them in. And he would literally shepherd them.
Really?
Yeah, it's been quite a memory of his realization that when you gave him a chore, he would do it.
Wow.
Now, Gloria and Jack had pet rabbits, I believe. And Gloria talks about Jack saying he's going to shoot hers. But but anyway, that's probably true.
Oh, no.
And so she'll remember that.
No. I think it's funny. You had a dog named Tippy, and we have a dog we call Tup Tup. We call him Tuppy all the time. Tap, tap, Tuppy. Yeah. The resemblance is uncanny. Me and you have a very similar upbringing.
Yeah.
We were in a lot of the same places at the same ages.
Yeah.
Really odd.
Yeah, when we left, and they moved in '53 from the farm, and he sold it. Jack had become very connected to that dog, and Dad had to sit down with him and say, "No, we're going into a city, and he's a country dog, and we're going to leave him with the farm." And that was heartbreaking.
Man, so hold on. You leave a dog for the new family that moves in, or what?
No, yeah, that's what you did.
And they just took the dog.
Yeah.
They're okay with that, people?
Yeah, they were in those days.
Really?
Yeah, the dog would guard the place, and they would feed it, and pretty soon they were more connected to the place than the people.
Wow.
We came back a year later, Jack and I, and on my vacation, and he was still in high school. We went up to the farm, and sure enough, Tippy was there.
Really?
And I said, well, go up, because he was getting old and couldn't see very well. And so he was barking, a lot. And I said, well, Jack, go up and let him sniff you. He said, no.
I want to?
No, he said it's better we leave it the way it was.
Yeah. It's probably for the best.
Yeah.
Okay, well, next question. How has the Antelope Valley changed over the years?
Oh, that's a good one. When we came here, we our Palmdale was like, I don't know, somewhere around 10,000, 15,000,
Wow.
15,000, something
Compared
like
to today, what is it today?
100 and some thousand.
Whoa.
So we went to church, and of course, where we had been, the church was very accepting. We went out to eat after church every Sunday, and everybody here was new. And so we got to the end of the service and turned around, and everybody was gone. And I said, well, we'll go find someplace to eat. So we get in the car and we'd drive downtown Palmdale, and there's nothing. You know, you have the Purple Pup, and that was about all. And so what happened? So I kept driving around, and it was getting dark. And because we had an evening service. And your grandmother said, what have we come to? And I said, there's got to be restaurants somewhere. And I said, I think there's a big boy down in over the mountain. We'll go tomorrow over there. I hadn't even been to Lancaster, so didn't even know if there was anything over there.
Yeah. Now, over the mountain, what are you talking about? That way?
Yeah,
Santa
going down to
Clarita?
the valley.
Okay.
And there was a Bob's Big Boy down there.
Oh, wow.
So we went down the next day and found out that this wasn't totally separated from the world.
Yeah.
But Antelope Valley was a rural community then, but also had minority groups. Sun Village, was where the segregation in Palmdale took place, and Lancaster,
Mm-hmm.
where they would not sell a house to an African American.
Whoa.
And so this was a big upheaval in Southern California, where neighborhoods, they called it, what was it? Something to do with breaking the code. They would have somebody who was white go and buy a house and then turn right around and sell it to a black family.
Oh, wow.
And this happened in Ohio too. And so then all of a sudden the prices of all the housing went down because there was this white flight, they called it.
Hmm.
But so the reason there is a Sun Village is it was a segregated community of only blacks at that time.
Wow.
And Little Rock was just a bump in the road.
And what year was that, where that was happening?
That was 1969
Wow.
and before, because the housing thing was before.
Wow.
And we didn't know anything about that.
Yeah. What was the biggest decade of expansion that you saw? Was there a decade that was just like, whoa? Explosion.
There was a shrinking.
What?
Just before we got here. In the 50s, some of the contracts went out with aircraft. And so you could buy a house for $2,000. And in fact, we paid $15,000 for our first house. But anyway, had a man in the church who had some money because he had developed the Rush roller timer for the Model T Ford, and so it became the bestseller.
Whoa.
Ford tried to buy it from him, and then they got around the patent and made it himself, and so ran him out of business. But he had a machine business down at a machine shop down in L.A., but he had a little money. And so he started going around it during the 50s, and he would pick up this house, and then he owned about 15, 20 houses in Palmdale area alone.
Yeah.
And he had them rented out. And so when he died, quite a profit.
Wow.
But the town was all aircraft oriented. There was very little of anything else.
Yeah. And Northrop and Lockheed, they were out here at that time,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Who was more prominent, or were they always like the same? About the
No,
same?
well, Douglas was out here too,
Douglas.
and I worked for them
Yeah.
back in the 50s. I would say Douglas was maybe the leader,
Whoa.
and then Rockwell was out here.
Right.
It used to be called North American Aviation, and so they had a plant. They had like 4 different companies that I knew of, and not counting the foreign ones. And so you had Northrop, and you had Lockheed, which was not part of Martin at that time.
Oh, they weren't. It was just.
Just Lockheed.
It was just Lockheed.
Yeah. So
Wow.
you had Lockheed, and then you had they did testing and such. And I used to do some of the computations for the building of aircraft when I was at Douglas, and we would always have some from Palmdale. And I said, well, where's Palmdale? Where is this place? But
Wow, that's funny.
but that's kind of what the AV was like. They had a lot of farming, and you had the big deal was always the fair.
Yeah.
And
they used to have the fair at, where was it, Palmdale High School?
oh, that's before my time. They had it at during my time. They had it on which is out on the other side of it, of Division.
I thought they had the fair at one of the high schools.
They may have at one
Wasn't
time.
it at AV High School or something?
They may have started there, but that would have been in the 50s.
I remember going to it when I was a kid.
Oh, well, that was at the other one.
Oh.
That's where it was out. Just if you go out I now, there's a big open area to your left.
Way on the east side, right?
Yeah.
Okay, we're not talking about the new fairgrounds.
No.
No, okay. That's probably what I remember.
Yeah.
I thought he was at a high school or something, yeah. The new fairgrounds are much better.
Yeah.
Much better. But the period of the most rapid expansion, what decade or what group of years did you notice that? Because I mean,
it didn't really hit till they finished the freeway,
when was that?
and that took place in the 70s.
And before that, it was just Sierra Highway, right?
Yeah.
That's
Well,
how you got through.
it did end right in Palmdale. So you had they had built the freeway out, and then stopped right in Palmdale because it ran out of money. And then if you went all the way down, there was a big section in Newhall that was not built yet.
Really?
Yeah, so you had to go off the freeway, then go back on. But anyway, they finally finished it. When they finished it, it made it possible for people to commute and go to work.
Wow.
So that was the beginning.
Ah, I see.
And then the contracts came into the aircraft during the 70s. And the L-1011 was being built up here,
Right.
and the B-1 bomber and the 117 or 111 or whatever it is, and then there was the U-2, which, by the way, Powers, who got shot down in Russia, went to one of our colleges back in Tennessee.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's
Were
where
there
he graduated.
pilots?
Yeah, it was just a fluke that he had been a graduate, and the Russians shot him down over Russia.
Wow.
It was one of the last U-2 flights. It was before satellites, and so they could fly real high, and they couldn't reach him until they reached him.
Oh man. Yeah, the U-2s used to fly really, really high.
Yes.
Wasn't that like the stratosphere plane?
Yeah, it was just right on the edge, and of course the SR-71 was the fastest plane.
Right.
And in fact, that your grandmother saw the final flight from Palmdale to New York area or someplace.
Oh, that's amazing.
It was it got up to Mach 3.1 or something.
Whew. That's crazy. Yeah, I heard when when you fired a missile at it, it would just speed up and go faster.
Yeah, it could outrun them.
It could outrun a missile, and that's just how they didn't. They probably had defense systems, but they would just outrun it.
Yeah, and they could. They had what they call tinfoil. They would spit out of the back of the aircraft, and it would confuse the radar.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. Okay, next question. Hindsight is 20/20. If you could go back and change one thing in your life, what would it be?
I would have spent more time taking care of myself and my family.
Yourself? What do you mean?
Physically.
Physically? Yeah.
I worked too hard.
You worked? Yeah, you did.
And you tell your dad the same thing.
You worked too hard when you were young too.
Yeah.
You worked 2-3 jobs at a time.
Yeah, that was a. You didn't think about it at the time. When I was working the 3 jobs, I got sick one time and went to see the nurse, and she said, well, if you don't slow down, you're going to pay. And I said, oh, I'm not worried about it. She said, no, you're not. But when you get older, you will.
Man. Well, you're, what are you, 84?
We'll be next month.
Oh, man. I think you've done okay for yourself.
Yeah.
Having worked all those jobs. Okay. Who were and are your best friends?
Well, my best friends back then
Yeah.
was Dick Carl and Randy Ward.
Okay.
And Dick and I had a falling out one time in junior high. Went out behind the school and had it out.
You guys fought each other.
Yes.
Who won?
Well, actually, I did, but I wouldn't have because he's a fighter.
Oh, wow.
And he just kept mocking me. And I'm not a boxer, and he was like a boxer. He could smack me in the face and then step back. And finally I thought, I've had it. And he came forward to hit me, and I just grabbed his arm, threw him down on it, and I was a little heavier than him.
Oh.
I got him down. I started pounding his head on the ground.
Oh, man.
And he got really scared. And afterwards, we walked away friends.
It's funny how that works with guys. Huh?
Yeah.
I've had the same thing. You fight with your friends, and, and then the friendship has never been stronger.
Yeah.
You know?
And we still, he lives in Eugene. Now, Randy Ward, I've lost track of. He went in the Navy, didn't finish high school.
Huh.
And so I don't know whatever happened to him. Now, my best friend in college was Charles Bell.
Charlie Bell.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about Charlie Bell.
Well, he was from, at the time, Cape Town, South Africa. Born in Salisbury, back then, Southern Rhodesia, which is in Zimbabwe now.
Mm.
His father owned a candy factory in that country.
Wow.
And his father had a heart attack. And so he sold his candy business and moved down to South Africa, which, by the way, was a good move because it was the safest country in Southern Africa.
Yeah.
Many of these other countries you just never knew, where there'd be an uprising and they'd kill everybody. But anyway, Charles became a devout Christian when his dad would go on street corners and witness, and really influenced Charles.
Wow.
We had a missionary that was preaching in Cape Town. His name was Max Ward Randall. And Max Ward Randall says, Charlie, I think you ought to go to one of our American Bible colleges and prepare for mission work, etc. So Charlie said he would. His dad had the money, so he could. And so he took a boat to England, bought a coat or two, took another boat, and went from England to New York, and then took a train down to Cincinnati.
Wow.
And I met him there. Now, I'm from California, which is unusual anyway, there,
Yeah.
which is 2,500 miles from the school. And he's like 7,000, or something like that.
Yeah.
And at first, we just were acquaintances. I was in one room, he was in another. And Mert McCassin and he were roommates, and he developed a friendship there. But the fact that he was away from home and I was away from home threw us together on holidays and such.
Yeah.
So we hung out quite a bit. And then Mert, I don't remember what happened there, but he got another roommate or whatever. And I had 4. Oh, gee, it was terrible. and anyway, I said to Charlie, I said, well, why don't we room together? And so he said, sure. So we started rooming together. And we roomed together in the old dorm, which I have a picture of. And then the new dorm, we were roommates there. And we were roommates for 6 years, 5, 6 years.
Whoa.
And then he was getting married. And he said, I want you to sing for my wedding. I said, okay. So I did. I sang for the wedding.
What'd you
I
sing?
have a recording somewhere.
You recorded it?
Yeah.
I want to hear it.
Yeah, I got it somewhere in my memoirs. But
Okay.
anyway, I sang for more than one wedding, by the way. I sang for Jack Cottrell's wedding, the one that wrote that book. And I sang for Lester LeMay's wedding. And Lester LeMay sang for my wedding. But anyway.
Was that a thing? You just asked another?
Yeah, you would. Anybody who could sing. You didn't ask somebody who could sing. And I was at the top of my form then. I was tenor soloist in the honor choir.
Oh, Grandpa.
So every time we traveled, that 6-year period, I sang all the tenor solos.
Wow.
But that's another story. But anyway, Charlie and I just developed a friendship that lasted a lifetime.
Yeah.
When Charlie and Mary decided to go to Zambia to do mission work, our church in Fairfield supported him.
That's awesome.
And when Lester LeMay went to Nigeria, I was the forwarding agent for him.
Wow.
As he was besides the church.
Mm-hmm.
So I did all the finances.
Wow.
So Charlie was like a brother. And I could tell him anything. I could cry about anything. And my English was bad. Always was bad because of California schools. I blame them. But anyway, my grammar was terrible.
Yeah.
And one day I said to Charlie, I've been getting so many bad grades because of my grammar. Would you mind just reading it over and doing some correcting where it needs to be better English? Oh, he said, no problem. All of a sudden it went from C- to A+,
Whoa.
just because of the grammar.
Man, and he helped you out with that, huh?
He really did, yeah.
Oh,
We took classes together. He was in that abnormal psych class with me.
Yeah.
And we took 1st and 2nd Corinthians together, and Hebrews, the book of Hebrews.
Those are classes?
Yeah.
Just on a couple
Just
books?
yeah. And then the Gospels. We had 3 years of Gospels. I just didn't have room for 3rd. But 2 years I took of Gospels.
Wow.
But anyway, it was quite an experience.
Yeah.
But Charlie and I just hung out. We'd get through with it. He worked for E.W. Bushman conveyor system, and Jack, my brother, worked there a little while. And he'd come home from work, and I'd come home from the bank. It was so funny. We'd sit down and never say a word, and we're starving. We hadn't eaten any supper, either of us, and we had our books in front of us. And I'd look over to Charlie, and he'd look over at me, and I'd look back at Charlie, and we'd close our books. I had the car. We went out and got a Pasquale's and got a steak hoagie.
Oh, wow.
And that's so good. And then we'd go to the coach house, and we'd get a giant Pepsi. So we had a giant Pepsi and a hoagie, and we're in for the night.
Wow, that's awesome.
But that's the fun stuff.
Yeah. And so when he went to when did he leave for Zambia?
I was already preaching in Fairfield.
Okay.
And he had always made a commitment to do mission work.
Yeah.
And that's another whole story. He was attacked and beaten, and they detached both his retinas by hitting him in the back of the head.
What?
He had to be flown back to Dayton, Ohio to have him reattached. But he'd already been there and started a couple of churches, which are still in existence today.
They detached his retinas?
Yeah, well, the thing we don't understand is in a primitive society, if you're riding a bicycle and a car hits you, you don't call the police and say, he pulled out in front of me. You get out of there. Because all the locals see you at fault, no matter what anybody says.
Who?
That would be the people that were seeing the accident.
Yeah.
And they would come up and they would beat the tar out of you.
They beat the tar out of the car driver.
Yeah.
That hit the bicyclist.
And they wouldn't do anything to him.
Okay.
And so that's what happened. Yeah, a guy stopped to get Charlie. He had his son with him. And the guy says, you better get out of here. And Charlie said, well, I've done some mission work in this village. I think I'll be all right. But would you take my son? Well, he wasn't all right.
Wow.
Lucky they didn't kill him.
Yeah, seriously. So could he see after that when he got flown back to Dayton?
Yeah, he did. He got his eyesight back, but he never went back to the mission work. He was done.
Whoa.
And in Les LeMay's case, he worked in a small village in Nigeria and converted just about 99% of the people to Christianity in that village. Came back on furlough, and the Muslim uprising came. They murdered everybody in that village, killed them all. And Les told me, he says, I can't go back. He says, I just can't go back.
Man, dangerous.
So you don't know, the price that people pay.
Wow. So you guys lost contact for a bit when you went to Zambia. How long was he there?
He was there a year and a half, something like that.
That happened in only a year and a half?
Yeah, a year and a half or 2 years.
Wow.
But I was on his mailing list, so I had contact with him all the time.
Oh, okay.
And then he came back and he went to work for E.W. Bushman again. Went on into, he had a engineering background from their high school in Africa, where it was civil engineering, and so it wasn't mechanical.
Yeah.
So he had to teach himself mechanical. Never got a degree in engineering, but became very proficient.
Interesting. Okay, and then how about after him? Your stages after college, your friends.
After college, when you get to work in a church, you don't connect with people like you do. I had friends like Dave Phillips, who followed me at Fairfield.
Yeah.
I had another Bell, who was a psychologist. That was a good friend. And then over here, and I was only there 7.5 years. So when I came to this area, I got real close to a couple of families. One of them was Gene McCullough, and another one was converted Jewish guy. Bob Longton.
Oh, okay.
So that's a couple of guys I was semi-close to.
Yeah, that's really cool. I hear the McCullough name all the time.
Yeah.
Mom grew up with the McCulloughs, right?
Yes, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we spent holidays together.
Oh, wow.
Because, see, Grandma Emmons was still back east.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And my parents were in Fontana till the 70s. So
And-
we moved them up here then.
And they were living with you for a while, right?
Well, when Mother died first, and then Dad got cancer, and they took his lung, and he was taking chemo, so he would sleep in Mike's bed, and Betty would take care of him.
And my mom told me that Mike, he would sleep on the couch
Yes.
every night.
Yeah. Yeah, and the
Thanks, Mike. That was a great sacrifice.
it was really
Yeah, no, really. How long did he do it for? It must have been a long time.
months.
Wow.
And one of the funny things that happened when Mike was watching the school mouse, which was a white mouse in a cage in his room for the summer.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And one night we heard Dad yell, "Somebody get in here." And so I went in. "What is it?" He said, "You're either going to put this thing away or you're going to have a dead rat." And that rat had got right on my dad's face.
Are you serious? It got out of the cage?
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Wow.
And so I said, don't agree to take any more animals for a while.
That's funny. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. What are your goals for the future?
That's going to be at the end.
Oh, okay. So we switched that with, what was your favorite period in life? We switched some questions around.
When I was in college,
Yeah.
probably, I enjoyed that. I built a lot of close friends and some very close friends. And I traveled with a choir where I became very close to the people in the choir.
Yeah.
And so there was a number of them, and we sang all over the Midwest, Florida, all the way up into Michigan, and Indiana, Ohio, West Virginia, Tennessee, Georgia. We sang in all those areas.
Wow.
And we had a great choir master, and it was not easy to be under him
Yeah.
because he's the one that graduated from Juilliard
Oh.
and in the organ, but was also studied under Christiansen, famous choir master in the East, and so he just was outstanding.
Wow. A Juilliard graduate.
Yeah.
Man, is that the one that taught Grandma some piano?
Yes.
It is him. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was his name?
Uh,
She wrote it. It's on. She gave me some piano stuff last week.
Yeah.
His name's all over it.
right now my mind went blank.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out. But that's really cool.
Yeah.
So that was your favorite period of life, huh? College days.
Yeah.
I already look back fondly on those days, and I'm
Well, I'll tell you one of the events
25.
that really was a highlight. Thanksgiving was coming. My favorite time of the year. Going to be stuck in the dorm one more year. And Charlie Richmond, one of my close friends at college, and he would be one of my close friends, along with Larry Ferguson. And Charlie says, "What are you doing for Thanksgiving?" And I said, "I don't know. Hanging out here, I guess." He said, "Would you like to go get a Thanksgiving dinner at my farm up in Michigan?" And I said, "Yes."
Whoa, up in Michigan.
Yeah.
Cool.
And he said, "But there's a catch." And I said, "What's that?" He said, "It's a hog farm. And at this time of the year, we have to sort hogs for market. So you'll be working every minute we're up there."
Oh, man.
And I said, "No problem."
Better than being in the dorms.
Yeah,
Okay.
so up we go. Now my brother had just, the next year, came to college. And he went up the next year on Thanksgiving with me too. So I'm up here, I don't know a thing about hogs. And they had a kind of a cage, and they ran him in the cage, and he had to figure out whether male or female by looking at them, and the size. If they got too little, you'd put them one place back in the field, and if they're too big, you put them back in the field too. It's because they get too big for market. So I mean, it's all day. When he said it's work, it is work. And that area where you had the hogs it finally got churned up. It was about this deep in mud.
Whoa.
And I'm in there, and I'm getting kind of woozy, and I slipped off the fence and fell into with the pigs.
Oh, no.
And the pigs, that's a little scary. And the pigs got on top of me, and they just drove me into the mud. And those farmers, I'm telling you, they never let me forget that. They laughed until they cried to see that city boy tromped into the mud.
That's funny.
And the next year when my brother was there was a snowstorm. And we were just so cold. And we were trying to get him into a truck. And they got the brainstorm that we'll pull the truck up to the barn door,
Mm-hmm.
and then we'll get him up the ramp. Well, you got to convince the pig that he wants to get his face full of snow. No way. And so they had this little extra heavy one, and Jack was, he feel like he was pretty muscular. And I'll get him up there. So he grabbed him by the front legs, and no way. And he grabbed him by the back legs, and I'll drag him up there. No way. It's too strong and too big. And all of a sudden, my brother lost his temper. He said, "You pig, you're not going to beat me." And he wrapped his arms around that pig and marched him right up into that truck.
Whoa. Oh, my goodness.
So,
Man, he had some strength on him then.
yeah, Jack was a football player for one thing. But he had a bad shoulder. He didn't need to watch himself.
That's right. His bad shoulder.
So that's one of the events, and there was another. I went to South Bend, Indiana, where Larry Ferguson's family was, and I think we had Christmas there one year.
Yeah.
But that was the hard time in the seminary life is when everybody left, and you're stuck there. And it'd be like you down at Cal State Northridge, and you come back from your last class and everybody's gone.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay. And if your mom and dad weren't here, it would have been tough.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I had friends that, it's an interesting thing, friends that they kind of go out of state for school. They always come back for the holidays, and then when they're done, their friends that they made there, usually they come back home, and it's kind of like those friendships you made are gone.
Yeah.
It's like they were good friendships at the time, but those people disperse, and sometimes you never see those people again.
Yeah.
Versus, I made a lot of really good friends at Cal State Northridge, and a lot of people stayed here in California because California's crazy,
Yeah.
It's a great place to live. The weather's amazing. So I was lucky enough to have a lot of friends stay here, and that's a privilege.
Well, the same is similar in Ohio and in Kentucky and Indiana, because many of the graduates end up preaching in that area.
Right.
So I got to know quite a few people and still do to this day. In fact, two of my Timothys are in Indiana right now preaching.
What does that mean, two of your Timothys?
Well, a Timothy is someone you raise up to be a preacher. Now, I'm not alone in that because Carl Bookout also had influence. And we had two major Bible colleges back there that we tried to funnel everybody to. Mm-hmm. And Carl went to Ozark, and I went to Cincinnati. And so one of these guys went to Ozark, and the other one went to Cincinnati.
Wow. So is that a nod back to the Bible? Obviously, like Timothy. What's the story behind it?
Well, remember when Paul connected with Timothy, he said, well, your mother and your grandmother led you, you know. The problem is that you were raised a Jew, but you'd never been circumcised. So he had him circumcised.
Ouch.
And on the other side, you had Titus, who was another one that he worked with, but he didn't because he was Gentile. Well, anyway, he kind of took him like a son under his wing and raised him up to be a leader in the churches. So when we say that person's a Timothy of someone, it is someone you have counseled to the point of getting them into a Bible college.
Oh, I see. Interesting. Very cool. A little bit of a gear shift here. Who is the oldest person you remember as a child?
My grandfather.
Your grandfather?
Yeah.
And how old was he at the time when... How old were you?
Oh, well, I would be 12, 13.
Okay.
And he was 70-some.
Okay.
And he seemed really old.
Yeah.
And my grandmother, she was a little younger, and they lived on the back of our place. And so I played cribbage with my grandmother every day after school.
Mm-hmm. What's cribbage?
Oh, it's a card game. You'll love it. It's a very simple thing. You have a little board, 15-2, 15-4, 15-6, and a pair is 8. So you got 8 clicks that you go up.
I don't know what you just said, but we need to play it.
Yeah, and then you go to the end, and whoever ends up the end first wins the game.
Did your grandma beat you a lot?
Yes.
I have a feeling you're going to beat me a lot.
But it was a great time to talk. Grandma told me lots of stuff.
I like those kinds of games.
Yeah.
Where you can talk and bond over something. Yeah. So that was you were 12-ish, so that was 1947. So they would have been born in like the late 1860s,
yes.
1870s.
Oh.
That's insane.
Yeah, they were actually married, and she was quite young, and they were married in 18-something.
Wow.
My dad was born in 1902, and he wasn't the oldest. So my Uncle Everett was older than he, and my Uncle Guy was older than Dad. And so when Uncle Everett was born, they'd been married a couple of years.
Man.
So they got married in the 1870s.
That's crazy. One day I'm going to be old enough and people are going to say, you were born in 1990, you were born in the 1900s, you know? Yeah. It's kind of like when I think about somebody born in 18-something, you know? It's just like, it's unfathomable. Because it's such a long time ago. You know, it's just like, whoa, before this century you were born? Like, It's just insane, you know? But, so he was the oldest person you remember, huh?
Yeah.
Even as a kid, you don't remember some super old Civil War veteran?
No, I didn't. I did when I was here. I knew a man 104.
Whoa.
And had his funeral.
Oh, wow.
But he was a Canadian.
Oh.
And I didn't know him that well, but one of my elders was taking care of him. So I had the funeral.
Interesting. Very interesting. How did you propose to Grandma?
Well, I'll put it down the way I had it. We just talked about marriage from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
And we're so compatible, so sitting in the car and talking, we just agreed to get married.
Wow. It was simple as that, huh?
Yeah. I said, would you marry me? And she said, yes.
Wow. That's kind of how you did it back then, huh?
Yeah.
There wasn't elaborate proposals.
Yeah, if you went into the 1800s, it's down on the knee. Oh, there is one thing that we did. And it's something I suggest to others. And that is I went to her father and asked for permission.
Oh, okay.
After I asked her.
After? Okay.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm doing this anyway.
She says, yes. Yes, I will. And then I went to her dad and I said, I asked your daughter to marry me, but I want your permission.
Would you have done it anyway if he said no? No?
No.
Why not? Who cares?
Any man who had a daughter would give you the reasons.
What if you were the same person and he said no? What if you knew you were a good person and he still said no?
He'd say, how are you going to take care of my daughter? That's the first thing. First question you have to answer is, do you have a job? Are you going to take care of my daughter? Are you going to, keep the family together? Are you doing this temporarily or are you doing this permanently?
Wow.
I mean, the dads are not stupid.
Yeah.
Now, I'm telling you, when somebody asks for Sarah's hand, your dad jokes around about that, but let me tell you, when the time comes, he's going to have some questions.
Yeah.
He's going to say, hey, what's your intention? In fact, another thing I talk to young people about, they'll say, well, I'm dating so-and-so. And I'd say to the girl, have you asked him the question yet? And she'd say, what's that? What are your intentions?
Yeah.
And if it's like, well, I don't know. I said to the girl, hit the road.
Wow.
If this guy doesn't know where he's going, you don't want to get hooked up with him and find out that I had one that was living together and she said, well, we just love each other. I said, yeah, I know what that's like. Okay. But I'm not convinced. And I said, and I knew this guy was creepy.
Creepy.
Yeah. And I said, for one thing, you got the cart before the horse. So now you're confused. If you've been together and you're sleeping together all the time, it's really hard to know if you're dealing with your brain as well as your body. That's number one. And so I turned to the boy and I said, what's your intentions? And he said, huh? What? I said, what do you intend to do? Well, I don't know. Why are you asking me that? I said, well, this girl needs to know. Are you looking at marriage or not? If you're not looking at marriage, then you got this thing all messed up.
Yeah.
And she said, no, I'm not worried. And I thought, stupid woman. And so they left. And as she was going out the door, I said, he'll be gone before you know it.
That's messed up, Grandpa.
I said, he's a messed up guy. He's only getting what he wants. And when he's tired of you, he'll move on.
Dang.
Lasted 3 weeks more.
Oh, you were right. Oh, you're a savage.
I've seen too much of it.
You did marriage counseling, right?
Yes.
Wow.
A lot of it.
Also, some financial counseling too, right?
Yes.
That's okay. And was that a common thing? Did that go hand in hand with a lot of preachers? They kind of
Not the finances, no.
no.
but the Premarital counseling, yes.
How did you decide to do that? Were there a lot of problems in the church, and you're like, you know what, I know what I'm doing. I need to help these people. How did
Yeah, there's some of that, and the other thing is, I didn't want to be responsible for a marriage that is on the rocks before it happened.
I see. So these are people you're planning to wed.
Yes.
Ah.
And so every once in a while I get somebody that's having marriage problems. That's another thing. I minored in psychology, which at this point in my life, I probably should have brought the psychologist on earlier than I got one finally on staff.
At the church?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I was able to offload a lot of that.
Interesting.
But the thing that I would try to teach them is, one of the questions I would ask is, what's the number one thing that is a problem in marriage? Number one. And they gave me all kinds of answers. No communication, sexual life, blah 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 blah. I said, that's what you think? Oh, yeah. Well, I got news for you. It's money.
What?
What? Said it's money. Who spends it? Who controls it? Do we have enough? What about the kids? How are we going to take care of them? We don't have enough money. That's the battleground.
Yeah.
So I said, I want to tell you how to live a life of financial responsibility.
Wow.
And then I would sit down and share with them.
Interesting. Wow. Okay, next question. What states have you visited? I think I should rephrase that question. What states haven't you visited?
I haven't visited Alaska, and I've visited everyone else.
49.
I'm 50.
But you got to go to Alaska still?
Yeah, we're getting ready to, but there's 50 in the United States. Then Hawaii is 51, and Alaska's 52.
Oh.
If I have the numbers right.
Oh, I thought it was. Maybe I'm tripping. I thought it was.
You may be right.
I thought it was 50 states. Let's look it up. Let's set the record straight because I'm not exactly sure. I'll Google it real quick. 1 second. I think it's 50 because there's 50 stars, right? How many states are in the United States? Waiting on your internet. Waiting. 1 moment. There's 50.
Okay.
There's 50. So you've been to 49. And you did cross-country trips, right? More than one.
Yeah.
To visit all these states.
You're talking about 50 counting Alaska?
Yeah, that's everything. It's 50 total. There's Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic.
Yeah.
Those don't count.
No.
Those aren't states. But Alaska and Hawaii are 48 or 49 and 50. Actually, that's not the order.
Yeah.
But there are 50. So you've been to 49.
Yeah.
And you just got Alaska to go. And so you're planning to go to Alaska and finish it out? That's awesome. That's amazing because I've traveled a lot of places around the world, a lot of different countries, but I haven't been to a lot of states here in the United States.
Well, there's some really gorgeous places.
Yeah. I need to go to, there's so many places I need to go to. Mike just bought that place in Bend, Oregon, I'm excited to go visit there. That's going to be cool. But that's on my bucket list, visit all the states.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, you're going to want to go to Washington, D.C.
Oh, yeah.
And the hardest thing there is there's so much that you just don't have time to do it all.
Wow, really?
But our first big trip was to go all the way up the East Coast. We went to the World's Fair in 1960, and then we went all the way up to Deer Island off the coast of New Brunswick.
Wow, they had the World Fair in Washington, D.C.?
No, that was in New York.
Oh, in New York. Wow. When did they stop doing that?
They still do it at just different locations.
Oh, they still do the World Fair?
Yeah, they have them in different places.
Oh, wow.
They had one in London at one time, and that was back in the 18-somethings.
That was how many, what was it, 4 years?
Yeah.
Every 4 years they did it?
I think so.
Man, that's
And
pretty,
they had one in Chicago at one time.
that's cool. Tell me something about yourself that I would be surprised to hear.
Well, you may not be surprised, but I guess it would be that I'm messy.
You're messy.
Yeah. Often disorganized and last minute to get things done. That's something you may not know.
Wow, yeah, you seem like you've got it together all the time, really.
Yeah. Well, when I need to be, I can be. But I grew up in a messy home. And I don't blame my mother for that. She was a good mom. It's just that she had so much.
Your guys' house isn't messy. Your house is clean.
Yeah, well, that's Betty gets mostly credit for that.
Okay.
But when I was a kid, I mean, it was, for one thing, Mom didn't even have a wash machine that you would consider adequate.
Yeah.
And so she's got 6 kids. And she learned to wring out things with her hands. Probably one of the reasons it saved her life.
What's that?
She was strong, and somebody attacked her one time back in San Pedro.
Whoa.
I'll tell you that story someday.
Okay. Man. So she did 6 kids. She had washboard?
Well, actually, it was a wringer that worked on a wash machine, but it didn't work half the time.
Oh, wow.
So she'd end up having to wring them out by hand and then hang them up.
Man, yeah, that's a lot of
A lot.
grip strength,
Yeah.
forearm strength.
And right here.
And, yeah, right there.
And the guy who grabbed her around the throat was not able to choke her to death.
She's like, I do laundry. Wham! Did she beat him up? Did she get away?
Well, she got drugged. After she ran out the door, they drug her back into the house and started choking on her again. And she didn't tell him that my dad was upstairs with 2 of the kids, because she's afraid he would do a criminal attack on our children.
Yeah.
She thought, well, I've got to now. I can't fight him off anymore. So she said, well, my husband has money upstairs. The guy was a druggie. And so he just pushed her up the stairway. And so she went fast as she could, got ahead of him, and started yelling out my dad's name. And my dad came out of a dead sleep. He was sound asleep. And she had been sitting up with the back door unlocked. And this guy had come in thinking this was a drug house, which at one time it was. Well, anyway, my dad came back bounding out of the bed, not necessarily dressed for exit, and saw this guy, and boy, he started for him, and scared the guy. He turned around and ran out the front door.
Whoa.
But I've said that since then. If my dad was angry enough, the guy would never have walked out the door.
Ooh.
Because my dad would have got him.
Yeah. Would have killed him.
And there was a police officer on the corner who saw all this and thought it was a domestic dispute.
Really? And he just let it happen? That's trash.
They moved right after that to Western Avenue in Inglewood.
Interesting. How do you handle stress and traumatic experiences?
Well, I didn't always. I was a worrier. And whenever you have a lot of responsibility, you have a tendency to worry more. And I said, I've got to change this. It's tearing me up. So the first thing I did is I did a study on worry, and kind of got a better grasp of what it is. And then the idea of anxiety, which is different than worry. Worry is long-term. Anxiety is what you're dealing with at the moment. And so what I learned to do is never to panic. No matter how little time I had left, no matter how difficult it was, it doesn't pay to get all worked up. You know when you're taking a final, if you panic, you're done. You can't.
Yeah.
You can't do it at all. So not to panic. Take things, and this is very important. When you have too much to do, you take things one at a time. Don't try to grab the whole thing.
Yeah.
You say, okay, I'll do this right now. It's number one. I used to make lists of priorities, and I'd have number 1 A, number 2 B, number 3 C. That means A comes first, B, C. So I became, in fact, I had a friend that saw one of my lists, and I was getting ready for a date at the time, and he went into the room with his wife and my cousin's wife. He said, now if you all would do it like this, he said, you'd get a lot more accomplished. And he was a big executive for a corporation.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So you don't panic. And I think the last thing is you build patience. Most of the things in life don't go on forever. And my cousin's wife told me a couple of cliches that was been helpful. And one of them was, what difference would it make 100 years from now? This thing that you're all worked up over. And the second was, don't waste $1 million worth of emotion on a 10-cent irritation.
Yeah. It's funny. I've been thinking about cliches lately, and it's funny how true they are.
Yeah.
And I, they really ground me, and I just keep thinking that to myself. The cliches keep you grounded.
Yeah, they do.
And if you frequent them often, as common sense as it is, hearing it again, sometimes it regrounds you, and you're like, oh yeah, even though you think you know it, it's just like it regrounds you in an odd way. But
well, somebody just quoted one to me just this week. They call them rodisms.
Oh.
And they were talking to me about that, and one says, yeah, like this one I remember, and she says, you can't keep a bird from flying over your head, but you can keep it from building a nest in your hair.
Yeah.
So temptation comes, but you don't have to let it land and take over.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah.
What makes you happy?
What makes me happy?
What makes you happy, Grandpa? Today. Go ahead. What makes you happy?
My family.
Family.
I enjoy family. I enjoy reading. And I enjoy travel, learning new things.
Yeah. I like to learn things every day.
Yeah.
Learning something new every day. It's my goal.
Yeah, and it's good. Good thing to do. There was one family where had a thing where in the family they said, you don't go to bed till you tell me something that you didn't know when you got up this morning.
It's a good way to live.
That's a pretty good, pretty good thing. I think too that to learn to do something new that you never did before.
Yeah.
You say, oh, I can't do that. I can't do any plumbing. I don't know anything about it. I can't do that. That's what most people do. And what I was taught from my childhood by my father, there's nothing you can't do. If somebody else can do it, you can do it. But he says you may not be as good at it. You may not do it all right, but you can do it.
Yeah. Learning new things it's a great skill, you know. Great skills to have, learning new things every day. Okay, next question. What's the most important lesson you learned from your parents?
Well, my parents taught me to be honest, sometimes the hard way, because I had gotten into some problems. Truthful, to tell the truth, and moral, to live a moral life. My dad had a bad experience with his first marriage and had come home in Cantil with a note on the kitchen table. He was married. I can't take it anymore, was in the note. I'm leaving. And she left him.
Wow.
And it just destroyed him. He put the 160 acres and little house up for sale and sold it for $250 and went back to Minnesota. And the rest is history, because she met my mom, they married, and there was me.
Wow. Man. What is your favorite thing about being a grandparent?
To be with my grandkids, to enjoy their company, to tell them the truths that I have learned.
Yeah.
That's my joy.
I look forward to that with my grandkids too.
Yeah. And you know, there's something about life that you've learned that you only learn through living it.
Yeah. Truly.
And you know, you just sit down and you say, well, I want to remind you, don't quit a job until you have one. You know, the word of wisdom is, don't leave yourself out on a limb.
Yeah.
Because I've done that. And and so you try to have a plan in mind, so that and if you've got the ability, we always had that with Mom and Dad, we could come home.
Yeah.
And it made a difference.
Wow. How did your family spend time together when you were young?
Sitting around the kitchen table.
Dinner time.
Yeah, breakfast time. Just talking.
Yeah.
Lots of talking. We took our cell phones and no, there was no cell phone.
Your dad had a radio, right? When you were young.
And we had a telephone only to be used for business or important things.
Business only.
Yeah, so I never got to use a phone.
Yeah.
Never called anybody.
Wow. Grandma, and is my mom here too? She is. Grandma and my mom just came home to interrupt the podcast. Just kidding. Love you guys. If you could have lived in a different era, which one would it have been, and why?
The early 1900s, and the reason is
You already lived in the early 1900s.
no, early 1900s. I lived in the middle 1900s, but the early ones were an era of new things and inventions
Yeah.
and discovery and applications and taking ideas, and you had things like the cotton gin and the locomotive that became the way of transportation, the auto industry that was in infancy,
Yeah.
the Ford Motor Company approach to assembly. Most people today don't even understand that. But the assembly line was developed by Henry Ford. That is the idea that you started with one piece, and as it went down the assembly line, you kept adding a piece.
Yeah.
That was always fascinated me.
Yeah. The early 1900s it was a time of just more expansion that had happened than in the previous hundreds of years.
Yeah.
Thousands.
Yeah.
You know, just the things that came about, aircraft, automotive.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
You know, it has absolutely changed everything about the way we live life today. And I don't even think there's no rapid expansion like that today. You know?
No, it's just different.
It's just different.
It's just different. The one thing I would tell young people today, everything has not been invented. Remember that.
Yeah.
There's not this, it's done, there's no more can be done. That happened 2 or 3 times in the last 100 years, where everybody would stop and say, well, there's no more. We can't do any more. These tubes are the answer, and they're going to be the work of the future.
Yeah.
And then some guy comes along with, well, I invented this thing called a transistor. A what? And no more tubes.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think we've hit a bit of a plateau, but like you said, not everything's been invented.
Well, what you say is, where's a niche and what needs to be done?
Yeah.
This, I was talking to my dentist yesterday, and he's related to the couple that started Friendly's restaurants back east. And in 1935, this couple, a man and a woman, 2 men, 2 brothers, decided to start a business in 1935. The worst time you could ever do it, the middle of the Depression.
Yeah.
They said, well, how are we going to make a living? How are we going to do this? He said, well, the business mind, brother said, a scoop of ice cream costs a nickel. Why don't we sell 2 scoops of ice cream for a nickel? And they said the day they opened up, there was a line all the way around their new little restaurant.
Wow.
They franchised, and they died millionaires.
Wow.
So it's finding the niche, the place.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, final question. You ready? What are your goals for the future?
Well, one is to enjoy my life, do some writing, and spend as much time as I can with my family. That's it.
Those are good goals.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're going to do some traveling soon here too, huh?
Yeah.
We're going, where's our cruise taking us?
We're going from Paris to Normandy.
That's going to be fun.
Yeah.
That's going to be a blast. Well, Grandpa, that was a lot of questions.
Yes.
Thanks for your answers.
Yeah. I hope they made sense.
Oh, they did. They did. Lots of wisdom. We appreciate it. Episode 8, Grandpa, thanks so much.
Uh-huh.